Our motto at Unlimited Courage is be kind but be fierce. When guys hear that, they just can't get their heads around it. They think they're two opposing forces and they just don't go together. Because we've been raised in a culture that says just be kind. You see it on school walls, just be kind. It's infiltrated every area of our society. But there's nothing wrong with that. But the problem is it's an imbalance, because what they've done is they've taken away man's capacity to be fierce, which means he cannot effectively become a man. He cannot stand up against confrontation. He cannot stand up against injustice. And he may even end up normalising cruelty and the terrible things that happen within his society, because he just doesn't have the capacity to stand. Now, ancient cultures knew this. There's a Cherokee tale of the black wolf and the white wolf, about these two balanced elements of a man. It's a beautiful story. And the grandfather is talking to his grandson, saying that you have to feed both. You have to feed the white wolf and the dark wolf in order to become a complete human being, a complete man. Even in the laws of the Code of Chivalry, which is based on Christian warriorship, they talk about meekness and meek. And Jordan Peterson brilliantly described this as a man capable of wielding the sword but chooses to keep it sheathed. I think that's wonderful. It's strength under control. You're only aggressive if you need to be. You only stand up if you really need to. But you have to have the capacity to do it. And this is what young men are not being told. This is what men in general struggle with. In fact, after 30 years of coaching, more than that, it's the main issue I see in all men and all boys. It's the common line that runs through them, is they just cannot have the capacity for fierceness anymore. So, which means they're ineffective in confrontations. They cannot stand against injustice. They can't even have a proper relationship because they can't stand up for what they believe in. They can't stand for anything. So it's extremely important. I actually will go one step further to say I believe it's the root cause of most mental health issues. But I'll touch on that another time. Let's get down to the fact that we have created a society through this idea of weak men that now have platforms everywhere, in politics and everywhere. And I think there's a direct correlation between men stepping down, not having the capacity to be fierce, and the state that our societies are now in. So you can't change it at that level. You have to change on the level of each individual man, which is what the purpose of these videos are. So today I want to look at the art of becoming dangerous in a positive way. The capacity for danger, the capacity for chaos, means that he's going to develop a society around him that's more just, that's more protected, but also the man himself can now explore the pinnacle of his own potential. Because if he cannot face the stuff that he's really frightened of, whether it be confrontation, things that are going on around him in his environment, he's never going to achieve his potential in anything. And I don't think we speak about that at all enough. It's such a vital component. So you can look on it then that this idea we were fed that the pinnacle of man's potential was in one area of his life, business, just become a success, get as much money as you can, or a creative hobby or something, was fundamentally not true. The pinnacle of man's potential is the character he builds, and he must have kindness and fierceness, and know when each one is relevant and when each one is to be used. So let's look at the first aspect of this and what we can do, because we're looking at, so when we look at this as a man, we're looking at, I want to become the best version of myself I can. I want to find out exactly who I am, but in connection with that, I also want to create the best society I can. Now that's the difference between modern personal development and what we're talking about here is the ancient codes. They didn't differentiate them. So that's a much greater responsibility. If I'm just selfish and go out for what I want, any man can do that, and plenty of men do. But if I suddenly say, I want to build my society, the safety for everyone, a guiding light for everybody, and also explore the pinnacle of my potential in my chosen endeavour, then I'm really focusing on something much bigger, much more expansive, much more potential there. So the first thing I always recommend is look at the physical training you're doing. Now, we've seemingly got a gym on every street corner now. They're everywhere. Everywhere you go, there's a gym, and there's plenty of fit men out there. If you go out in a town, you'll see many of them. But yet, the mental health of men is declining. So there's clearly there's not a direct relation to how they're training and the outcome of that in mental strength. I don't think they're training for mental strength. I think they're training just for a physical look, validation, just to have people notice them. And I also think the gym is the last place that men think they can express their masculinity, which is why it's so popular. This will not do at all. That's going down the wrong road, and I know this because I was in bodybuilding for many years. I won a Southern England bodybuilding title, and I actually weakened my mindset through it. So I understand the game fully. I've been within it. I've mixed with many bodybuilders, and this may offend a lot of people, but they were the weakest men I've ever been around mentally, because it's all about how I look. It's all about validation. Your courage, your sense of self-worth is based on how you look, because that's what you're training for. So what's the answer? Guys, I would ditch it. Ditch the whole lot tomorrow and go and find a martial art. Ditch what you're doing now and go and find a progressive, effective, pressure testing martial art. There's so many out there now. You've got Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you've got kickboxing, you've got judo, anything that's going to test you. And in 6 months, you'll be a completely different man. I guarantee it. If you think you're too busy to do that, then just hire somebody one-to-one. If you're a busy businessman, you think, I can't go to evening classes, which I totally get. Just get a trainer, get one-to-one tuition from one of these guys. Don't hire a personal trainer that can hold pads up for you. Hire someone that actually really knows what they're doing and is really into their art. There's a big difference, and you will soar. Within 6 months, you will be a different man, totally different man. And this is the thing, there's many confidence courses out there, how to become more confident, how to be more self-assured, but these will work far more effectively because they actually change you on the level of your actual being. They'll open up so much for you. There's no comparison at all. The space between bodybuilders and martial artists is massive. It's not just a little gap, it's huge. They have completely different mindsets, completely different capabilities, completely different confidence, and a completely different discipline. They are miles apart. So you can still go to the gym, but then you start to devise your gym work around what you're trying to achieve within your martial arts. So I'm really big on the physical side of it. We need to have a physical platform that's going to build real courage and confidence. Because at the moment, we've got loads of guys going to the gym, as I've already said, but it's just not transferring into mental strength. So you need to ask the question, to sit down and ask yourself, what do I want to become by this? You know, where am I heading? Is my training really changing me? Is it making me overcome my fears? And if you're really honest, the answer will be no. And the mindset behind this you'll develop is huge. I know entire martial art dojos, a huge amount of members that do not listen to the government on any advice on health or anything else. Strong men do not take advice from weak men. They just don't. And so I remember it's a big decision on one occasion, and it was the right decision for this dojo. None of them decided to take the government advice, and it was the right decision. But that's the sort of level you're at there. You develop a brotherhood. You develop a brotherhood within these martial art gyms, something you can really rely on, and you're all pressure testing each other. You're not staring in the mirror, comparing who's got the biggest biceps and hardly talking to each other. Honestly, there's a completely different level here, and you need to explore it, because a lot of times what you're really after is the thing you're frightened to do. It will give you so much knowledge there, so much knowledge. So that's one thing I think is very, very important. And the mindset will be one where you stop listening to weak men. It just happens automatically. My judo instructor, Brian Jacks, he was 6-time European champion. He was European champion at 16 years old. He said to me, the training is just so hard. It just develops a mindset. It just develops the way of the warrior. Even if you didn't read any books, it just naturally develops that. There's no other training that does that. No other training. Talking of books, I also think you should back up with a good philosophy as well. Now, Stoicism's huge now, but I really love the resurgence of chivalry. I think chivalry is a beautiful code. I also love Bushido, the way of the warrior. We teach all of this on our course, The Kingmakers, at unlimitedcourage.com, and we're opening our doors in September for this. So if you want to have a much more detailed, in-depth look at this, with the training, mastering one's habits, and a real philosophy of courage, check it out, The Kingmakers. We're launching on the 1st of September, and we're going to go into this in detail. On that, look at your vices. Look at what you're consuming. I don't mean just with food, but what you're consuming in terms of your time, because all of this stuff weakens you over time. I'm not saying you should never do it, but just make sure that you put it to 1 day a week. So for me, it's a Saturday. That's when I enjoy a little bit of food that I want to eat, but the rest of the week I try and maintain super strictness. Also, watch what you're consuming via the media. Do I need to say any more? There's so much fear and misinformation now being spread. It all goes into our body. It's all a form of food that we take into our flesh, and we start to live that, and it affects our nervous system, and we start to live it in our environment. So be careful what you look at. It's amazing if you spend a week without any of that stuff, how it just changes your personality, your mental health, and everything else. So it's extremely, extremely powerful. The other thing I'd like to mention is the training side is make sure that you're doing it seriously in a way that you've got down a written outcome that you're actually going for. Do spend the time to sit there and go, what sort of man do I want to be? Who are you responsible for at the moment? Do you have a family? Have you got your children watching you? That's a big one, because they don't listen to anything you say, they're just watching how you behave. So look at your responsibilities you have. If you're a single guy, then the only duty and responsibility you have is to your environment. And you do have a duty there. Young men aren't taught this anymore. Your duty is to be a guiding light in your environment. It is to be a protective force. I wish this was still taught, but it's so important, it's worth mentioning again here. So, yes, act at becoming dangerous. Be kind, but be fierce. Act at becoming dangerous. Aim at becoming dangerous. Read a philosophy that really captures your mind. I'd love to be like that. When I first read Bushido, that captured my mind. I thought, wow, this is what I've been looking for. And I'm sure if you read these texts, you'll find enough information there that you'll think it'll relate to you. It'll fire you up. It'll spark you up. It'll serve your imagination, and you'll start to aim at something very, very different. But every young man out there has a duty to his environment, his society, to look after it, to protect it, to be the guy, to be an example for those that are coming up behind him. So look at your responsibilities. They're only going to get bigger. So how good you become, how protective you become, that virtue of prudence where you look at outcomes and you will not be manipulated by weak men, will not just serve you in your personal potential, in your quest for whatever you decide to do, but it will also create the environment that you actually want to live in. And this is the thing, at the end of the day, whatever you decide to do, that's not really the mission. The mission is you. You are the mission. So even if you go out there and decide to be a successful entrepreneur, or you want to be a competitive athlete and do really, really well, it seems like that's the mission, but the underlying mission, the only real mission, is to find out who you are, who you really are, underneath society's fake rules and everything else that go on, what you're told to be, what you're told to do. Underneath that, there's pure wisdom. And to aim at that, to consciously aim at that and be aware of that is super powerful. And you can train in a way that facilitates that. You can eat in a way that facilitates that. You can read stuff that's going to facilitate that, until you then find that rather than adding stuff on, everything's going to fall away. Everything you didn't need will fall away, and you'll just be left with that pure truth. So this is the beginning of the art of becoming dangerous.